FullTiltPoker.net presents Learn from the Pros.
Welcome back as we continue to learn from the pros right here on Fox Sports Net. Let's turn this. My neck is killing me. By the way, this is a whole half-hour show dedicated to you, the amateur. You're kind of like me. We make mistakes all over the place. So hopefully this roundtable will help clear things up. You've been hearing from the professor, Howard Lederer, all show. And nice of you to bring your kid sister along, Annie Duke. Hi, Annie.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Nice to squeeze in a little time in between appearances on Letterman and Leno and the Today Show and anything else, like big movie deals you might have brewing as well.
Some of those things, but you know, I always have time for you, sweetie.
Giddy up. I like Annie Duke. I like this next guy as well. Phil Gordon, of course, a champion poker player, also author of the Little Green Book. What's going on?
Just talking poker.
All right. Well, we appreciate the time. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Look who's here. Paul Phillips. I didn't even recognize you because of the hair. It's normal.
Well, they didn't give me time for the salon, so I made up for it in the shirt.
Yeah. Well, maybe our next guest is giving you a hair color idea with his shirt. David Williams. How are you?
I'm good. I'm sad I can't do as much with my hair like Paul. You know, I tried to grow it out the other day. I gave up after 2 days. Couldn't do it.
Well, don't lose hope. Don't lose hope. Guys, we appreciate it. Thank you very much. Look, there's a bunch of mistakes that the amateurs make all the time. What are you seeing out there, Annie?
Well, I think one of the biggest mistakes that I'm seeing lately is that people don't bet according to the size of the pot. They'll bet according to the size of their chips. So what will happen is the blinds will be like a quarter half, and somehow an amateur will get in 20,000 in chips all of a sudden, which I don't think any of us would ever be capable of doing because they're not looking at the pot and determining how much they should be betting.
Most of my bets I like to have about at least half the pot to the full size of the pot. Very rarely will I bet less than half the pot, and very rarely will I bet more than the full size of the pot.
I think a lot of the underbetting is driven by fear of playing on, the overbetting is driven by fear of playing on later rounds. They're always trying to end it because, you know, if everybody folds, then I'm done. But you have to develop your willingness to play throughout the entire hand.
So are you saying that amateurs don't want to continue?
Very often, that's exactly the case.
They don't want to make more decisions.
Do you think I'm scared of you? Do you think I'm scared? Am I scared of you, David?
You might be scared of me. I don't know about these guys.
So we shouldn't be.
No, I mean, I don't know. I mean, as far as my take on it, like I've been helping my mom learn a lot because she wants to get better. And one of the things I know, she doesn't overbet the pot. She minimum raises all the time. I mean, before the flop, you know, she'd be first to act and she just raises the minimum, you know, 25, 50. She'll make it 100. And then she'll wonder why everyone calls, and then she'll bet the minimum on the flop, you know, when the pot's got 500 in it, and she bets 50. And then she's asking me at the end, how did I lose to this hand? I'm like, well, you didn't protect, why are you raising the minimum? You know, you got to raise it more. Now, she's learned now, and she doesn't do it, but I told her a good rule of thumb is what a lot of us kind of start out as 3 times the size of the big blind to start out with. And she's had more success since then because then it kind of narrows the field and limits her opponents. And she doesn't have everyone. I mean, why would you fold for 100? You know, it's so small. Everyone comes in, and then it compounds. Well, this guy came in. I'm going to call. Yeah. Well, then I'm going to call, and then the pot just grows.
Great way to get 6 or 7 way action.
I think one of the big issues that people don't understand with minimum raises is that there's a lot of reasons why you raise, but one of them is to gather information about your opponent's hand because, you know, we're all playing under extreme conditions of uncertainty where we only know what our cards are. The better you are at figuring out what everybody else has, the better you're going to be at making decisions later in the hand. When you only minimum raise, you're giving people such a good mathematical price to call that when they do call, particularly out of the big blind, you have learned almost nothing new about the big blind hand. Because I know that all of us facing a minimum raise in the big blind are going to call with probably about 80% of the hands that were dealt. If someone makes it 3 to 4 times the big blind, now we're down into the 30% and 20% range. So you've narrowed down your opponent's holding, you know, so much that you're going to be better able to make decisions later on because you're going to have a better idea of what you're against.
You know, also I think, you know, min raising or min betting is kind of a symptom of another common amateur mistake, and that's just playing too many hands. And if you play too many hands, then you don't have the confidence to bet more than the minimum because you're just always like, oh, I got a little something, we'll see what happens. You limp in, you make these small bets. You know, it's really important to wait for good hands, and then when you have good hands, be betting about the size of the pot.
It doesn't take long before you learn that the discipline, starting hand selection is absolutely far and away the key to this game. I mean, everything else is secondary to that.
But the real key to starting hand selection is position. And I see tremendous amount of amateur players playing rag hands out of position. If everyone folds to you and you've got king-jack, it's okay to go ahead and raise with that king-jack. But I see the amateurs coming in under the gun with 9 players left to act. They have no real conception of the value of position in the game. And that hurts them almost as much as underbetting the pot or
And that really, in a lot of ways, comes down to the same issue, which is it's an issue of information. When you're acting under the gun, you have the least amount of information of anyone at the table. And not only do you have the least amount right then, but for the rest of the hand, you're going to have the least amount of information because you always have to act before everybody else acts behind you. So when you're in conditions where you have the least amount of information, it's really important that you're starting with a very high likelihood of having the best hand.
Well, you know, gang, we'll all admit that it's a different game right here at the table than as opposed to the computer. What are some mistakes people are making when they're sitting down and playing on the web?
The main thing I see on the web is the small betting. I mean, it's just, that's the thing I see.
Min raise button.
right?
It's the button. There's a button for it.
And it kind of drives me nuts, although I mean, maybe it's effective against me because the minimum raise me, I never fold. I'm like, I'm not folding for that raise. I end up getting myself in a lot of trouble. I don't, by that means, so I don't think it means it's a good strategy. I mean, if I just thought about things and took it seriously, then I could probably destroy someone who just keeps doing that. But that's probably the biggest issue I see online, that and just people playing way too many hands out of position.
Well, you know, and I think the buttons is you know, sort of is a problem. There's something about having to bluff and you have to do this in front of somebody and like convince them that you're not bluffing and sit there. When it's just like that raise button over there and you just click, I mean, there's way too much bluffing going on the internet. And if you just kind of slow down and really think about you're putting chips in the pot, not just pushing a button, I think you wouldn't be bluffing so much.
Guys, after this roundtable discussion, what are the odds that I'm ready to take on the 5 of you and I'll be the last man standing?
Oh, you're like a
Come
lock.
on, really.
Thanks. I appreciate that. I guess that means it's time for me to get out of here. Thanks again for the time and the insight. We appreciate it.